Okay, here we go. It's about 6 miles east of the Russian border on the 60 and a half line, 178 something or other. We are finishing up one of our trips, and as you can see, there is a little bit of ice. Now these are fingers that are coming off the main pack ice. This you call pancake, or it's kind of medium ice. It's not very light, but it's not the kind of stuff that's gonna move your gear. It's very, very dangerous, but if you know what you're doing, you can fish through this stuff pretty manageably. I don't suggest, though, that you get in your local salmon boat and go out here and try to do this stuff yourself, because you'll end up dead pretty quick. Anyway, as you can see, I'm looking for the next pot right now. We just landed the last pot. You can imagine what it's like looking for these pots. 2 buoys in between a bunch of ice fields. So right now I'm looking at current direction, current speed, how fast is the ice moving, what the wind direction is, what the wind direction is going to be doing. I'm calculating when the tide will change. That will move the ice. Will it move it away, or is it going to keep toppling down on me? So you're going over reports that you have from NOAA, which are always good, but at the same time, there's no better weather report than on the scene. Now, when you see driving through this, you think, it's not that bad. It's flat, calm. But each one of these pieces of ice that you're passing is weighing anywhere from 3,000 pounds to 100,000 pounds. So these are semi-trucks, some of them you're running into or could be running into, which will break your welds, break your ribs, bend the strakes. I mean, you can do a lot of damage pretty quick. Typically, if you're going to be in the ice, the first thing that you're going to want to check is your antifreeze levels and make sure that you're not running straight fresh water through them. Why, you ask? Because the water is warm this year at 34 degrees. Fresh water freezes at 32, salt water freezes at 28. So the temperature right there where the slush ice is, where the ice pack is right there, that's going to be about 30 to 31 degrees. Now, if you just have fresh water running from your engine, which we call coolant, runs through your keel coolers, they're just like channel coolers, basically. It runs through there, cools the water off as it runs through piping that's on the outside bottom of the boat, brings it back to the engine cooler than when it left. Well, if you freeze those lines, the engines overheat and you are then dead in the water. If you freeze your keel coolers and bust a pipe down there, we have Fernstrom coolers, then you're stuck pouring water all over your engines and hoping that it cools down and somebody can save you. If you freeze up your keel coolers when you're in the ice, hopefully you have a good friend. Right now I was waiting for my friend Joe Wright and fishing buddy to get back up from his offload, but if so, he would tie off to me, tow me through the water that's not in the ice until my keel coolers thawed out, and thus we would continue the process. Hopefully we would add some antifreeze. So that's usually the first thing that you have your engineers look at. Make sure the antifreeze levels are good. And as you can see, Mason's down in there in the red coat. We're running to the next pot, but we are at the end of the trip. I have a few hours I can kill. Mason's never been in the ice. So I thought, hell, let's throw him on a piece of ice. You know, Matt's been on the ice. I've been on the ice. I think Joe's been on the ice. You can see Mac White, who used to fish with Junior. He's been on the ice. He's a 35-year veteran. And Winston's one of our new guys who we love. But he's never been on the ice either. So, speaking about that, we'll take a quick break, and Mason will go out and have his moment, which these moments will and can only come once in a lifetime. I mean, any skipper that I know, usually in the middle of hauling crab gear, finishing up a trip, would never stop for a picture like that just because of time constraints. But Sig's taken us to the ice plenty of times, and yeah. So there's Mason taking a picture for his family. You can see in the back there, that's Billiken. It's a Trident boat. They're pretty close. They're doing the same thing we are. They might be moving. They might be resetting. Who knows? But we're all fishing around there. The fishing was really good right there those couple days. I start joking with Mason on the hailer that my throttles are giving me trouble, which I was kidding, but then it starts to happen actually for real. So it's one thing for you to have problems without ice, but once you're in the ice, you don't want any problems whatsoever. Engines are already running hot because they're pushing millions and millions of pounds of ice around throughout the day. So they're already hot. So you want to keep track of your stack temperature all the time, especially when you're going through ice. So you don't want to go too fast, so you'll put too much load on the engine, overheat the engine, blow the seals, donezo. So there's a lot to think about when you're fishing in ice. Nobody that I know likes fishing in the ice, including myself, because it's highly problematic. You're doing constant inspections of the steel, the engine room, your equipment, and everything that can happen does happen in the ice. It's just inevitable. It's Murphy's Law. So you can see that piece of ice. I'm sure that weighed 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 pounds. Hit that at full speed, which is 10 knots. You could do some damage. Saga was built in 1979. They built her to fish next to the islands, so they never stretched her like the other boats that are currently around now. But they did put an ice skirt around her nose, which is a half-inch plate of steel, which allows me with 2 tanks down, right now I have 3, to go about 4.5, 5 knots through the ice, and it won't even make the bow flex at all. But right now I have 3 tanks down. So as I bob down in these little swells here, as I get closer to the ice edge, which is about 5-6 miles to the south of me, it's going to hit above that ice skirt. So you don't want that to happen. So you take it easy. Now if I had 2 tanks down, I'd be jamming through this stuff right now. I already know where the pot is, so if you can see it, maybe you should be a skipper too. But here's one of the things that I'm looking at too, is we're looking for the next pot. The guys are in a current temperature of 4 degrees Fahrenheit. It's getting warmer. I think we had a southerly blow coming the next day, but it still doesn't make it easier to take sitting out there when you're wet. It's really easy to get confused in these ice fields without proper equipment, because you can start heading south and think you're going north, and so on and so forth. It's even more discombobulating than just being in the ocean with no visible landmarks to go by. So Mason hasn't came back. He's messing with my throttle. I only have 1 engine right now, so I'm probably doing about 3 knots. If you can hear the noise in the wheelhouse, you'd hear it beeping, and it's so annoying, especially I'm looking for ice, monitoring my equipment, listening to the sound of the ice hit the hull, and all I got is this beeping sound in my ear that is so annoyingly loud, it drives me nuts. But you get accustomed to focusing through all that. Now you can see in the distance, I think that's Trailblazer, that's Derek Ray. He's one of my favorite people. I think he ran, when Phil died, he ran the Cornelia, and that's how I met him. And he's been one of my heroes ever since. Helped me get my license, and has always pushed me to not pay attention to the crap and just keep powering through. And so that's him, that faint light down there. And he actually helped me get out of the ice a couple days, 4 or 5 days after this when I came back up. I got really stuck in it, and he parked outside on the ice edge and just drifted there while I ran to his lights, which I think I have a video of it, and the swells are about 10 to 15 feet. So then you had ice swell, which is not fun to deal with. Can you see the pot? If you can't see the pot, I don't blame you. It's a nightmare looking for these little guys. And what can happen is you go to town or overnight, the ice freezes around your buoys, and then it drags them from hell to breakfast. You don't know where they are, and you just got to take account all the drifts from the last day or days you were gone, and you have to basically grid and do a search and rescue, and it's highly costly. Guys have looked for their gear for months. Currently, if you wanted to build 80 pots, which is what I can carry right now with the ice, you're looking at a year wait just to get those pots built. So what's hard is Saga's 107 feet long. She can only carry 100 pots with 1 tank of water or 1 tank of crab. She holds 3 tanks of water or 3 tanks of crab. And she can only hold 165,000 pounds fully loaded. And so you have to be a little bit more strategic with your gear than if you have, say, 127 or 130 or 150 foot boat where you can carry 200 pots. A lot of the guys that are fishing right now up here in the ice probably have at the most 110, which is everything when you're fishing on this kind of biomass. This pot's going to pull up, you'll see it, and I'll tell you how many hours soaks on it. And I'll tell you where fishing in the ice can become very, very deadly when that pot comes up. Right now we're fishing in 100 fathoms. I have enough to fish in 140 fathoms. Now, typically you don't want to do that, but these tides are running so hard that your buoy bags are going under. So this is, if you look at this, it doesn't look like it's moving, but I want you to go, or when you go to a river, that's what it's doing right now. So it's shoving everything down. So I have to have 2 more extra shots than I would like to. Right now I'm carrying 25 fathom shots, so that's 5 shots that we're fishing. It's a nightmare and so boring. It's so boring that right now I went and got a latte as I wait for it to get pulled up. This team that you're seeing currently on deck is the best team I've ever had. And I never thought that I would ever get to have so much fun fishing with a group of guys as I did this last Opies, which you will see on TV, and it was, what you're probably going to see is not going to be fun. None of it was seemingly fun, but with these men, they made it very, very tolerable. And a lot of times I think we did have fun, even in the chaos. Now, if you see the line coming off the block, you can see I'm pulling on it. The pot's actually way to the starboard. Now, I'm just kind of drifting on it, 1, because I went and got a latte. But 2, I'm not trying to power through the ice. I'm also looking for the next pot, too. So I'm squared up to go to the next pot. It's directly in front of me, about 600 feet. Now I can't see it, but I know where I'm going to find it because I know the drift, and I've been picking these pots all day and night. Oh, this is boring. So this isn't fast-paced fishing right here. This is fishing deep and fishing in the ice. Fishing in the ice is very scary because it's so boring, but then there's 10% of the time that's highly chaotic. These boats move slow, but when things happen on these boats, they happen so fast you can't stop them. So there are some instances that you do have to think like a fighter pilot, because when they start happening, there's so much power that no human can stop them. Everything's too big. So you have to be very smart, swift, efficient, and so I always like to promote fun amongst my crew members. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm temperamental, and yeah, everybody's got their days, but for the most part,